Turns out the US Postal System, not fast enough to get me my next set of Cyber Battalion figures. Big shock. So we're going to save a Cyber Battalion week for random review for another date and move on to other toys, as there are always more toys in this room to talk about. And we're going to start with her. This is Generation's Chromia, part of the line before it became all about big line-wide gimmicks combining and headmasters and whatnot. No, this was thrilling 30s, straight up Generation 1 style releases, though this one does mix in plenty of IDW as well. It's actually a very, very heavy retool of Prime Arcee, not the first edition one that I've already reviewed. The mainline one, the simpler engineering, the smaller size, and all that. And you'd be hard-pressed to tell unless you were told that or knew the molds very, very well, because they went all out to make sure this was a very different toy. I mean, aside from the fact that, obviously, very different style of motorcycle. This is very Tron bike, very futuristic Cybertronian vehicle mode. Obviously, with the canopy there, you're definitely not riding this motorcycle. You are driving it, literally. And I assume when I say you're driving it, I of course mean the mini-cons in the audience, because it's a Cybertronian vehicle mode. Why would it have a cockpit for a human? But nevertheless, creates a very cool futuristic look. I do like that. It kind of reminds me of the G1 Afterburner toy. The Technobot motorcycle with the giant canopy. Kind of gives me that same kind of vibe. Of course, cast in this very nice shade of sky blue with very pale blue accents going throughout the underside of the toy, and then these hits of red here to give it some color. A little bit of white here and there too, but we'll get more of that in robot mode. For now, just the tiniest little bit of it in there. I do like the overall look. It's a very sleek, very high-tech style of motorcycle. Now, the thing with Cybertronian vehicle modes is they give you this really cool futuristic aesthetic you don't normally get. But the downside of Cybertronian vehicle modes is they don't really feel the need to hide much of what they are or much of their robot mode bits. I mean, you can see the hands of the robot mode sticking out the rear there, and the arms are very plainly visible, and these are very, very visibly the legs. Now, they do have enough machine detail in order to get across as, well, they're not the legs, but visually, when we get to robot mode, you're going to notice there's not a whole lot of difference, unfortunately, and that does come to some of the toy's main problems, which we'll get to. In the meantime, wheels do spin, though good luck actually getting her to balance and roll on all of it. You do have a kickstand for that, but I don't know why you bother making like a motorcycle toy with rolling wheels, because, it's only got 2 wheels, doesn't it? That doesn't really work out without a human being on top to give it equilibrium of any kind. Yeah, that just don't work. But we do have peg holes on the sides, so nevertheless, she does have a mounted weapon that she can peg in and be just a little bit Mad Max, a little bit Twisted Metal. Looks kind of silly, but hey, you do have the option of giving her that little bit of armament she needs in this mode, should she require some very fast, on-the-move action. So, aside from that, yeah, not a whole lot more to talk about. Autobot symbol, light here, thrusters here. Let's get this girl into robot mode. And we're going to start seeing a few of the issues I have with the toy here. So, we're going to start by getting this out of the way. This kind of turns it into like big chopper style, which I kind of like if you have that option. I've always felt like there could have been like another version of the character who had that, as like that's how you're supposed to transform it. But we gotta get the canopy untabbed. We gotta get a lot of stuff untabbed. We'll start with these little panels here on the side, which frees up her legs to extend out to the back. Go ahead and undo the tires, which are all intersealed with each other. They do have the dreaded clear plastic hinges on them, but doesn't seem to be too much of a worry. Hasn't broken on me yet. Folding the wheels in like so, all hinging down on the ankle of the foot. That's the legs, so the rest of it, the rear section itself pegs into the canopy, so this is the hard part, and oh man, it's really stuck in there. Oh, bad day to have trimmed nails. Hang on. See, this is the part where I really should cut this out, but at the same time, if it has something like this, you do really want to demonstrate the fact that it really is stuck in there. Never mind. No, we're going to skip this. There we go. I had to pry it open with a toothpick. Stubborn little jerk that it was. Alright, so that out of the way, we can go ahead and lift this up to give the arms room to come down a little bit. Get them hinged in the proper position later. For now, with all of this out of the way, we can shift the pelvis there, and she's got a little bit of the old automorph to bring her head all the way up. One of the few Generations toys to have any kind of gimmick or action feature whatsoever due to the nature of her original mold. So with all that said, we're going to fold all this back. We're going to tighten this up as much as we can, which is admittedly not a whole lot. With that done, we're going to stand her up and present her in her completed robot mode. That's Generation Chromia in a nutshell. Looking quite good. She is very sleek, very feminine. You know, still in that, you know, the fembots need these pointed feet, high heels, and ample bosom. So, you know, it's going to be a little bit more before we get to, before we get to the strong arms of transformation design, where a lot of that doesn't really need to be part of the transformation or the design element, but for now, it was still here. And hey, at least you can say it was G1 accurate. Speaking of, she does have a lot of traits of the G1 toy. Of course, there are bits and pieces left over from the Arcee toy, namely, she is a little bit spikier in some details than Chromia ever was, but she keeps the heart of it, I feel. The head is very much into the G1 aesthetic. There's a little bit of IDW mixed into the design here and there, but of course the IDW design ended up going in a completely different direction. This one maintains closer to the G1, I would say, much as it can, coming from a more inspired mold choice in order to make Chromia a reality. Keeping in mind, the fact that we even got a female Transformer that wasn't Arcee was kind of astonishing at the time. You know, Chromia was a name that G1 fans tossed around for a while, and of course she was in the G1 cartoon for all of one episode. But the fact that any Transformer toy would come out that was not Arcee was kind of a big deal, especially in a collector-oriented line. This is kind of the point where it was okay to start putting some more girls in Transformers, and we're still kind of fighting for that, but you know, we're taking steps. This was the beginning of progress. Overall, the vehicle mode's colors do maintain. You get more hits of red and more of that very pale blue to accent little parts of her details, like her stomach and the edges of her elbows, her knee guards especially. And then you get more of that white, which now you can see where the cuffs at the ankles as well as here at the wrists. Not a whole lot, just enough to kind of break up the colors. It's a very blur color scheme now that I really look at it, isn't it? Not that it's a bad thing. It is accurate after all. I do like just how involved the color scheme is. You got blue on the inside of the legs, light blue, blue, white, light blue again. She's got a lot of things going on that really kind of break up the detail and give you a lot of visual dynamic. That's really cool. What is not cool, unfortunately, is how she ends up dealing with her vehicle mode, which is it all just hangs off of her back, even on the back of her legs. While splitting the wheels and putting them there is pretty much a common thing to do. I've seen more than one Transformer do it these days. It still means everything just kind of gets tucked to the back, and this is where I kind of take issue with her design. It's one of those toys that doesn't so much transform from a robot into a vehicle so much as she wears her vehicle around her to become the robot. Everything that makes her a robot is visible in the vehicle mode, and everything that makes her a vehicle is just hanging off of her back in robot mode. I'm failing to see the integration between the two designs in this particular toy. Now, the Prime version of the character kind of had this, the Prime version of the toy kind of had to go with this because it's a very sleek and detailed design Arcee had in robot mode, and they just had to make it work within the vehicle. You know, you could see where, for instance, they handled that pretty well with the first edition toy. Chromia here, however, is a blend of IDW G1 and a lot of original inspirations, kind of alluding to the original design. They had the freedom to do something different and kind of push a little bit of what her design could be, and instead she kind of ends up like this, which is partly due to her remolded nature, but I still feel like they could have handled something better here. I don't know. If you're going to retool it this much, they could have avoided this in some way, I think. It's just too bad. At the very least, I wouldn't mind this tucking in better, but the hinges are all hard molded to not allow this to go any farther down. That's pretty much as good as it gets, unfortunately. And if this part is too flush, then now you can't move the hips. So even that is a little bit disjointed. Well, speaking of that articulation, we'll go into it with a fully ball-jointed head down there at the base, so you have plenty of range and motion. It'll even a little up and down. Shoulder ball joint, not bad. Doesn't go out far enough because the cut isn't quite right, but you do have an extra torso hinge if you want to adjust the height of her arms and whatnot, just to make sure it's in the position you like. You do have a elbow, which is fully ball jointed. Going for a bicep swivel, but no, it's a little bit too hard pressed in there. Ball joint at the wrist, which means not only do you get rotation, you also get a little bit of bend here and there if you want it. Nothing at the waist. You do have ball jointed hips, which have a good range of motion. It gets a little obstructed, but not too bad, unless the kibble is down, in which case it's horribly obstructed. Full on thigh swivel. Nice knee bend, thanks to transformation mostly. But then nothing at the ankle, thanks to transformation mostly. She does carry a decent amount of articulation. As a svelte and thin character like her, I would expect a decent amount of posability to really show off her, what seems to be a flexible and action-oriented design. You can get her some really nice poses. Thanks to her extra large heels, you can actually balance her pretty well. This huge backpack here doesn't really interfere with the balance for her poses and whatnot. So, go ahead. She's very playable in that fashion, at least. I do like the design of her gun. It's nice and simple. The character in IDW would approve because it is just, there's no flash to this gun. There is just shoot and hopefully kill whatever you're aiming at, which is pretty much the kind of attitude she has all the time. So that, in general, is Generations Chromia. It's a mixed bag on this one, because the vehicle mode looks good, and the robot mode looks good. I do like all the color integrations, and I do like the futuristic looks that she has in both modes. I just can't help but feel she's missing an element that I wish more Transformers had. It's the same issue I had with shell-forming movie toys, where I just don't get the vehicle transformation nature. I'd rather them turn into the vehicle rather than just kind of tuck themselves inside of it. So I feel like there's limitations here, and it's a character that's endured in the comic books, so I wouldn't mind some other attempt down the line, especially now that her design has changed so much. For now, though, it's nice that there is at least a Chromia toy out there should you want to add to your Autobot Fembot ranks, thin as they usually end up being.